Guitar Will Travel, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine, with your host, me, James Patrick Regan, otherwise known as Jimmy from the Deadlies. And today I'm speaking with bassist Will Turpin from Collective Soul. In our conversation, Will tells us about the current tour with Hootie and the Blowfish, and Will talks about how he joined Collective Soul, which goes way back to going to the Roland's church when he was a child, and it was Will's father's studio Ed Roland worked at while putting together the songs for the first Collective Soul album. Will discusses his start on bass and the music scene in Atlanta and his dad's studio and all the bands of that era in Atlanta. We discuss Collective Soul's new album, Here to Eternity, which was recorded in Elvis's Palm Springs estate. And Will tells us about his recording technique and his gear in general, including his bass collection, which includes a Music Man Stingray bass given to him by Eddie Van Halen. And Will gives us an in-depth overview of his pedalboard. Will talks about his scooter he travels around while on tour and what else he does to pass the time. You can find out all about Will and Collective Soul at their website, collectivesoul.com. That's COLLECTIVESOUL.com. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, and most of all, review this podcast. I'd really appreciate it. And you know what? Please support Vintage Guitar Magazine and all the wonderful things they do for us guitar players, because they do so many wonderful things for us guitar players. Here's my buddy Will. Hey, Will, how are you?
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Going good.
Good. Glad to hear it. Thank you for doing this. Are you guys all golfers or just Ed?
Mainly Ed. I live on a golf course and hardly play. But
That's great. So you guys are out with Hootie?
Yes.
How long is the tour?
This was 45 dates. We're down to about the last. We're down to the last 25% of the tour. Probably about 12 dates left.
Wow. Okay. And how's it going? How is it? I mean, you guys are. I'm surprised you guys aren't headlining your own tour. You guys are very popular. Is it well attended and everything sold out?
Oh man, we're doing great. It's all packed out, excited audiences. You know, and I think a lot of people think, oh, how does Collective Soul and Hootie go together? But
exactly,
we've all been friends for near 30 years now, and
okay, we're
all from the South. Yeah, and we all released our first records on Atlantic Records in 1994. So
wow,
there's a lot of history there and a lot of friendships, and we're just having a blast. And man, the crowds are loving it. Man, they're loud, they're full. We're selling out big arenas and amphitheaters.
Yeah, exactly. So. Exactly. You were in the band in '94?
Yes.
Okay, cool. But you joined late. As I read.
Yeah, I joined. It was late '93 when I told them I would commit.
Okay. Were they after you were out of the gate?
It's a good story. We all grew up together, so we really don't have a memory. I tell people I don't have a memory without knowing who Ed and Dean are. Mm-hmm. It's a good story. We were always tied together and always in and out of kind of different lineups. Ed being 7.5 years older than me, he watched me and my friends come through high school.
Okay.
And then my father's studio was the hub, so we were always kind of connected and always knew each other. We all went to the same high school.
Okay.
I would have been going to the Roland's church when I was a very young child. That's how I knew who those guys were from my earliest memory. So. It was always kind of tied together, but
right on.
Yeah, the lineup as Collective Soul was late '93.
Okay, all right, very good. And so it's your dad's studio that Ed worked at?
Yes, he was engineer there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Bass wasn't your first instrument, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it was, and I'm a classic refugee on bass, like a lot of bassists are. But yeah, man, piano and drum set would have been my first things that I started learning.
Uh-huh.
And then I picked up a guitar around 13 years old. And when I told the guys in Collective Soul, when I told them I'd play bass, I didn't even own a bass, and I just was ready to commit full time to the rock and roll thing. Yeah. And I told them I'd play bass. So.
Yeah. So you played in high school in bands and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Playing out in clubs in Atlanta?
Yeah, all that, man. We were, back in that era. That would have been late '80s, early '90s. We were at the Masquerade or the Rec Room or all the Atlanta scenes, the Point. Uh-huh. We were at those clubs watching other bands or performing ourselves.
Sure. What bands were you watching that caught your eye or your ear?
Yeah, I remember we loved a band called Holly Faith. there was also Follow for Now. That David Ryan Harris was lead singer of that band, but David carved out a career. But there was a lot of bands we really enjoyed, and there was definitely a scene in Atlanta in that era.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think Atlanta's always had a scene from going back to the late '60s all the way to now. There's always
sure, man, for sure.
Yeah,
and Macon wasn't too far away. I mean, there was an era in Macon where Little Richard, James Brown, and Otis Redding would have been hanging out in Macon playing at the there's a little two block street in Macon that had some of the best music in the world.
Wow, fantastic! That your dad's studio? What part of town was it in?
South side of Atlanta. There's a little town called Stockbridge, Georgia.
Right, and with a lot of people coming through there as well. I mean, did you get exposed?
Yeah,
to
it was. He was friends with everybody in the industry, and there was a lot bigger studios. The Cheshire Sound would have been one of the bigger ones back then, and same thing with Southern Tracks. So Reel to Reel was right underneath those top level of studios. But my dad would get somebody like 38 Special to come in, and maybe if they had to touch something up or whatever. Not a lot of the major bands would come down there to record a full record, but
no.
But a lot of good bands did come through there, and it was a busy studio, man. It's where we learned a lot. Hanging out there and recording there.
Right on. Very good. And so let's talk about the new record. You recorded it in a house. Is that correct? In Palm Springs?
Yes.
Yeah. And it belonged to Elvis?
Yeah, that was Elvis's estate, his Palm Springs estate, and everything had been left just like Elvis left it. So certainly had a vibe and a lot of Elvis's vibe, and his DNA was all over the place. You could see the red carpet, the black and white checkered floors, the pink tile in the master bedroom.
Oh wow!
That Priscilla would have picked out. You know.
Did you before she passed away? Did you get a chance to meet Lisa Marie or any of those people?
We did meet Lisa Marie, and we were a few degrees away from her with a bunch of different people in the industry. And we were there in the house when she passed away.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
And crazy enough, we had the engineers' control room, so to speak, set up in Lisa Marie's old bedroom. And
wow.
And that night she passed away. It rained in Palm Springs, which it doesn't even rain a lot there.
Yeah.
And the roof in her bedroom started leaking that night.
Oh my God! Oh, wow.
And it didn't hit any of the equipment, but it came through the sheetrock in the roof, and we just thought that was weird.
Yeah, of course, of course. That tune, a matter of fact, were you kind of trying to capture any of that, the Elvis vibe with that song, or no? It was you just came up with it.
We were just swinging, man. I mean, we were, I think we weren't directly going for an Elvis vibe, but there's certainly a little bit of a swinging Elvis vibe there to it. And when we know that there's a vibe, we'll definitely lean into it, just kind of more like a tip of the hat kind of thing,
Yeah.
Honestly, I was feeling more like Stray Cats than Elvis.
Exactly.
Yep.
Or even like Queen, like Crazy Little Thing.
It was exactly more like that for me, from where I was taking it. But yeah.
Is it Hey Man where you started out with the bass solo?
On which one?
On Hey Man?
Oh, no, it's more of a riff, and that's just how the arrangement worked out.
Yeah.
The bass just kind of starts it out.
So for that bass tone, were you going direct, or were you playing through an amp, or how did you grab that?
Man, I go direct. I stopped using an amp for bass a long time ago, man.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I mean, I use multiple signals, and I'll use pedals, plug-ins. I got some amp simulators on my pedals. The new Ampeg DI that I use has an amp simulator on it.
Yeah.
I've got some different things saved for that, but man, I just found the frequencies way more solid, a lot easier to manipulate.
Yeah.
When I just use direct signals. And again, I use multiple direct signals. I always have at least 2 signals going in at the same time.
Yeah.
And they'll be slightly different, and then it'll leave me leadway when we get to mix down to manipulate the sound.
And the amp pegs that you're using on stage, are those live, or are you going direct there as well?
Yeah, there's two direct
SVTs.
Signals going to front of house.
Okay. Yeah.
The SVTs are cranked.
Oh,
they're on.
Okay.
It's loud right next to me. If you come sit in my little pocket right next to the drums, you'll dig it.
Okay.
But I stopped micing those, man, so many years ago.
Yeah.
Especially live, man. You got a drum set right next to you, so it's just a richer, stronger sound with the direct in.
Yeah. Do you deal with Dino at Ampeg?
Who I've been talking to at Ampeg? Dino Moxicellus.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, that's him. That's him. Right on. So as far as basses, I noticed that you're using either like a P bass or a jazz bass styled bass, but it's definitely not Fender. What are you using?
It's a Music Man.
Okay.
It's a Music Man bongo bass is the name of it.
Okay.
I think they came up with that bass almost 20 years ago now. They came out with that bass. It's super balanced. It stays perfectly in tune up the neck. The sonic quality is so even all the way up the neck. And they wanted me to start playing those because they were new, and they sent me some, and I was like, well, I don't know about this shape. I don't know. I ain't used to it. It looks kind of different, but
yeah.
I still play them. They make me custom ones. I have a lot of 3 or 4 different custom bongo basses, and man, they're just super strong live. Everybody loves them. Our front of house guy loves them. And then my collection. When I get in the studio, I have a nice bass collection, but when I get in the studio, I don't usually pull those out, although there was a session last week that I used it on and it sounded strong. So yeah, man, that's what I use live.
Right on. Your bass collection at home, what does it look like?
There's all kind of stuff there, man. There's some relics like my dad's 65 jazz bass.
Oh wow.
I've got a Music Man Stingray that Eddie Van Halen gave me in 1995.
Wow.
I've got 2 sister basses that Fender made me out of the custom shop in '97.
Okay.
I called them sister basses because they're exactly alike. They look slightly different, and I used those on tour for a long time. And that way, when I switched between basses, there'd be no sound difference for front of house. But man, I got so many basses. I got a PRS bass that Paul Reed gave me.
Wow.
And it was something they were thinking about putting into production in the late 90s, and they never did. So it's got a nice little handwritten serial number on the back. But that PRS bass is small scale, but man, scale doesn't mean power. So that bass is on a lot of Collective Soul stuff.
Right on. And what about amps? Do you have amps at home, like any kind of collection?
Yeah. I got a nice flip top. I got a Fender amp I love that. They only made it for a short period of time, but I think it was probably just too expensive. It didn't catch on, but it was a Fender amp. I can't remember the model that I love also. And I got a flip top that I have keep in the studio. And there's some other, like, I got a small little guitar amp I use every now and then if I want to get it does this really cool crunchy distortion thing when you overdrive it with the bass. So every now and then I do mic a cabinet depending on what's going on, but
Yeah. And so your current pedal board, what's other than the Ampeg DI, what does it look like?
There's a couple JHS pedals on there. The Ampeg, got the Ampeg distortion on there. There's a Morning Glory that I've used for a little more drive and grit. That's JHS.
Yeah.
And I'm using I'm actually using the Ampeg chorus that they just came out with. It's really nice. The Ampeg's making some pedals now, so that chorus is really cool.
Yeah, right on. That's great. So after the tour ends with Hootie, what do you guys do?
There's just all kind of dates coming up, man. We don't, it's been 30 years now. We take breaks, but we don't ever really stop. There's always something on the horizon. There's always something on the calendar.
Yeah. Do you guys do everything as a fly date, or are you guys in a bus?
Planes, trains, automobiles, spaceships, submarines. We do them all. Motorcycles. I got a lithium-powered scooter I use every now and then.
Really? Do you take it with you on the road?
Yeah, it's under the bus.
All right on.
Yeah. And it's actually it's a meaty one. It's a 100-pound scooter, so I do actually sometimes I'll take it I'll drive it from the hotel to the venue sometimes.
How do you how do you make sense of all the different towns every day?
Man, it's just what I've been doing my whole life, and it just makes sense to me. Sometimes you forget where your hotel room is, or you get lost backstage because it's the same thing over and over. But man, it's been great to tour around and learn all these towns. And and you can drop me in secondary cities, and I'll know exactly where I'm at without anybody even telling me. I'll just give me a second to look around. I'll be like, oh, we're at Dayton, Ohio.
On the days off, what do you do for fun? What are you doing on days off?
Yeah, I used to bike a whole lot. Now I've got that lithium batteries. I like to go out and explore. I like to hit trails, hit some parks.
Yeah.
And this, on the day off, man, a lot of times half the day is totally just being lazy and sleeping and catching up.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Do you like binge watch TV shows or anything like that, or not so much?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, today's world, we can sit in our bunks and stream pretty much anything. Yeah, when Game of Thrones was still on a tear, I remember taking a whole summer and catching up with that because I was like probably 5 or 6 seasons behind, and I remember binging that whole thing in my bunk, staying up. Sometimes I stayed up all night, and I'd hear the crew or somebody, unloading or whatever when we were at the venue. And I'd walk outside the bus and looking a little weird after you stay up all night. They'd be like, "You stayed up all night again, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, man."
Well, you know what? It's been a pleasure talking to you, Will. I don't want to take too much of your time. It means a lot. I'm glad we got to catch up.
Cheers. Thanks, James. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yep, thanks, man. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Have Guitar Will Travel. You can catch up on all the things I'm doing at thedeadlies.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms as well. And please support Vintage Guitar and all the wonderful things they do, because they do many, many wonderful things for us guitar players. Thanks. Please subscribe. Please tell a friend. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.